Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Gold Mine. We have another fantastic show lined up for you here. I am very excited to bring this. We got Lucius joining us for the first time. We got Craig joining us for the first time. I am excited to get this started. But before we do, while I am excited, y'all should be too. Make sure you're hitting the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. Get your emails whenever we go live, which is, of course, on Wednesdays now. I am excited to bring this to you. But before we get into the convo, let's get some intros right out of the way. Lucius, we'll start with you. 10 to 15 seconds. Who are you? Where you come from? All that good stuff.
Sure. Lucius Pomerantz. I'm an orthopedic surgeon, specialize in hand surgery. Also do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and been doing combat sports one way or another for a long time.
Outstanding. Craig, how about yourself?
I'm just some Scottish guy that is now in San Diego. One foot in the IT world, one foot in the strength and conditioning world.
I like it. Those two things usually work out quite well, don't they?
Mm.
They're pretty co-located. Shaun, how's life out in the mountains right now for you?
Everything's good at this end. Just got rid of our uncaring guest house, eating all of our food and not giving me enough love. That's for you, Seb Lavoie. Where are you at right now? So Seb Lavoie just left us on his way to his next tasking. We only got to spend 12 minutes together. It felt like it was 12 hours. Never enough time hanging out with that guy, and always good to see him.
Yeah, absolutely. The one-legged devil strikes again, right? Like he just jumps in, eats all your food, takes off.
Wouldn't even offer to shovel my driveway either. You know what I'm talking about? He's not a giver.
Man, that guy too. Like you get a little snow shovel attachment for his leg, he could easily do that. Just scoot around and be fantastic. Anyway, uh, before we get too off topic, speaking of Seb, I have a clip from him that I want to engage right away. And I think this is from back in the day. I'd say probably, I think it was August something last year. So episodes 200 ish. But I'm going to play the video and then I'm going to get your guys' thoughts on that. And then we'll start the discussion from there. So here we go.
Don't fix your wounds, you're going to bleed on people that didn't cut you. So I think that a lot of the managing fears has to do with how you address relationship as a whole. Are you looking for somebody to bail you out? Are you looking for somebody to be with you so that you can share hardship? Are you looking for somebody to be there because you're a person in your life wasn't a parent or otherwise? What are the reasons? What is the underlying reasons? And those reasons need to be identified. And of course, those reasons need to be remedied too, because what should actually happen is you are where you need to be because you want to be there. And now that you are ready, you want to have somebody along the way, a friend or otherwise, to be with you and exchange those moments together.
Bam. So on that, Craig, I'm going to put you up first. What do you got thoughts on that?
It's really interesting. He's absolutely spot on. I a lot of the time I think there is a piece that's missing from allowing people to move forward. And a lot of the time that is they might not have the tools or equipment to do so. They might want to do something, or people might externally be expecting them to do something, but they don't quite have the tools to move themselves forward. They might be locked in place. And so I think, I say this a lot, it's up to us. So it's up to the people around people who want to make the next step to try and open the door and to help them through. That's what I think.
I like that. Lucius, what are you thinking?
Yeah, it could be a huge discussion. Yeah, I mean, everyone talks about the term baggage. I've got baggage, and everyone's got baggage. You bring it along with you, and there's things that you can change. There's things you can't change, and sometimes you just gotta focus in entirely on what you can do at that moment. You don't think about the past. You don't even really think about the future. You just go at it from at that moment. Try to make things better at that moment, and a lot of it is being around other people who can share the experience with you and help you be a better person at that moment.
Absolutely. Shaun, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that, first of all, we've all got skeletons in our closet, not baggage. And I'm only referencing that because it's just behind your left ear,
I was
Doc.
gonna say.
The thing that comes to mind immediately is Seb and I were having this conversation, this precise video conversation, where at the start he's talking about you either stop the bleeding or you continue to bleed on others. And and a couple of names had come up as we were trying to figure out how to, and I'll crudely say the worst case scenarios out there, the people who are the most resistant to change. And I mean so resistant that it's not a matter of them being wrapped around the right people or them having a great neighbor or everything being perfect in the world to move them forward. It's not about any of that. If that's all in place, there's still some people who are so dogmatically reluctant to change that they take a contrarian position whereby they know they need to change, but they're just going to fight the change just because they're a contrarian. But what they don't realize in so doing is the damage not only they're doing to themselves, but the damage that they're doing to the community that's tracking them being a contrarian. And sometimes, like, it can become a bit of a viral contagion where a isolated contrarian can cause enough kerfuffle that it then becomes a thing amongst a few people. And now the contrarian gang is sort of fighting against the righteous gang, and then we've got division, and then we're talking politics all of a sudden. And so to bring it right back to the central issue of you can do everything for a person, and sometimes they just want to bleed. So how to encourage them, how to recruit them, how to Jedi mind trick them, how to hypnotize them, what is it that we can do? I feel like I'm missing like my last tool almost. The one tool that I need that I can move 9 out of 10 people, more correctly, I can move 9.9 out of 10 people, but it's that 0.1 that I can't move. And I don't know if I should, but I feel compelled to try and help. But it's hard when it's an uphill battle on your hands and knees on glass all the way to school and back. I mean, there's only so much you can do until I don't want to shrug my shoulders, but until you almost resign yourself to, I got to put my energy into someone else. But I'm a guy, I'm like a dog with a bone. I don't like giving up my bone. I like to gnaw on that thing until I've solved it. So if you guys have got any pro tips, or if you bumped into anything along the way, or you've heard wisdom from someone else in this contrarian position and how to modify it to some degree, I'm all ears.
Let's start with Lucius. What do you got?
Well, I mean, the contrarian, I mean, I guess you got to figure out what the underlying motivations are. There's some people who, you know, they just want to be a contrarian because it gets a rise out of people. There's some people who are contrarian just because they're not willing to change or adapt, as you were kind of alluding to earlier. And then there's all kinds of other things in between. So if you can figure out the underlying motivation behind it, is it chosen ignorance? Is it that they're just not willing to accept other ideas? Is it because they want to get a rise out of you? You know, all of those things are going to be a different strategy. There's people who are just going to take a long time, and I would never discourage you from trying your best to help those people. You're always going to want to feel like you've done everything you can, but you can't kill yourself if you don't get the same results out of those people that you get out of the usual person. But if you put your effort in and you keep trying, I think often you are going to feel that you've made some headway, and hopefully you can keep the communication open and eventually get them to a place where they're going to be happier with where they're at.
Yeah, I like that. Craig, what are you thinking?
Well, if we're assuming that somebody actually feels like they do want to make progress and change, then I think that's a bit of an easier task, okay? Because in those scenarios, it kind of comes down to how much capacity they have and potentially what they're fearful of, I think. If somebody isn't interested in changing, for whatever reason, then that's so much of a science project that it might actually become something that uses all of your capacity up. And what I mean by capacity is, the amount of energy that a person has, right? I call that capacity. People that are smarter than me have called it capacity in the past, and I've just sort of adopted that terminology. But once somebody wants to change, you have to sort of peel the onion back and establish how much breathing room they have. So they might have a whole bunch of stressors in their life that mean that they just can't get to the next stage. And then once you've established that, i.e., gone through sort of peeling the layers back and establishing what things can potentially be addressed to allow them to have more capacity for whatever it is that they want to do next, then you will probably see a kind of forward motion. At least that's what I think, right? I don't really believe in laziness at all. I think laziness is completely made up. And the reason that I think that is it's externally identified as somebody who is suffering from like complete inertia and getting called lazy, but they actually have got zero capacity to move forward. And that lack of capacity is resulting in them appearing to be completely listless or whatever. And so the project then becomes what things are eating that capacity. They might only have a thimble full of capacity, but they want to have like a pint full of capacity, something like that. And it's kind of peeling back those layers and identifying those things and slowly but surely seeing if you can sort of add a little bit more water to the sponge type deal, so that it's not saturated, but it's just got enough. That's the way that I look at it.
It's interesting. I was looking at this from like a tactical medical point of view in terms of it. I got a flashback of when I was doing my tactical combat casualty care course from years ago, and it was always what is the first thing you need to do when somebody goes down in a firefight? Well, you need to win the firefight. Like, if somebody is sitting there screaming their head off and saying, my leg, you can shout at them to put a tourniquet on all you want. You can throw one at them. You can try to aid them in any way you possibly can, but your priority still needs to be on your firefight. Like, you need to win that firefight. So in my mind, I'm always thinking when somebody's really struggling, or they're really not moving forward, or they're not, engaging their life the way I see them that they should, I'll kind of toss tools at them when I have the opportunity, but I will focus my engagement on my own life, my own firefight. I'll try to do as best I can here so I can get those little moments to kind of toss them that bone every once in a while. Like, hey, try that. Try this next. Try those things. And so that I'm still actively, working on helping this person, but I'm not allowing myself to run out into fire to like, oh, now I'm going to go smash on a tourniquet and do all the stuff to help him or her right away, because I got to worry about other things in my life. So at least that's where I'm coming from it. Shaun, thoughts on this? Coming back to you.
Well, just listening to the three of you, I will add this, and I should have said it initially, that anytime that I've run into this, and it's been like just one person in my entire life, it's just this one guy who I refer to as the example. In even in my failure, I'll call it, to get the guy moving forward in a way that I thought was going to be good for him, I was still learning how to do it better for others. So it's not I don't want anyone to misconstrue what I said, that, it's really frustrating. Poured a lot of energy into a person. They were so dogmatic. They were actually counter ambushing everything that I did. At the end of the day, I'm learning how to work with another person, and I'm learning how to do it better. And I've learned now that this individual helped me establish a line in the sand that I've only got so much capacity in a 24-hour cycle. And so then it became a bit of a lesson for me as to where to pour my capacity in to get the most payoff for the collective, not for Shaun, but for whoever I'm trying to help. So it did help me draw a line in the sand. So everything always has a silver lining. That was the best silver lining I could draw out of that interaction from that period of time. And so I guess, though I don't have a new Jedi mind trick tool from you fellas, I do have a little better sense of a line in the sand moment for sure.
Absolutely. Lucius, got any additional thoughts on this at all?
And just, I can't relate to combat as you can, but this, and within the world of medicine, addiction, it's powerful. It can be the most powerful thing ever. People die from it all the time, and there's nothing that you can do. Friends, family, loved ones, they can be revived, be dead, and given Narcan, wake up, having had their heart shut down, and that is not enough for them to stop using drugs. So there are some people who will not change until they are ready. And the world of recovery talks about rock bottom and things like that, but someone has to get to that point to want to change, to need to change, and all you can do in the meantime is be there when that time comes. Hopefully, give them some tools along the way.
Yeah, that's a great analogy for sure. Craig, you got any additional thoughts on this?
Well, I just think that sort of combat casualty care analogy is genius, because you talk about neutralizing a threat, right, before you work on the patient. So think about something that has caused that person injury, and let's say you've got the capacity to be there and respond. Then the next thing that you do is you address the threat. So whatever the thing that's causing them to feel harmed or whatever, if you're able to address that, then that means that you've then got the tools to take care of them, and they have a way out. So that's very clever. I really like that one, Chance. Good job.
I enjoy it too. Any other thoughts on this before I got another couple of videos here? I just wanted to make sure everybody's good to go. All right, before I jump in the next one, I'm going to hit these real fast. Winterstorm jumped in here. Good morning, afternoon, everyone. Good to see you. Corey, I actually have a clip of you coming up right away, so just don't go anywhere. Jamie Scott, good to see my boy Zed in the mix. Good to see Vanessa Chaos. Happy Wednesday, team. Good to see you. So the next one here, this is really great. It kind of plays on what we're talking about here, so let's jump into this one, and we'll
really standing on the shoulders of giants that have gone before me. And I'm not talking about something as simple as those in the same profession as me or those with the same experiences as me, but anybody who's had the guts to come up, sit down and talk. And I know we're talking about men's health and seeking betterment here. It's really about also being vulnerable enough to open yourself up to say, I don't know. And that's okay. I don't know is perfectly acceptable as long as it's followed up with, what do I do?
And I pulled this one in here because I really think that one of the biggest issues that we have, especially as men, is that I don't think we have the capability of saying, I don't know, or at least within a lot of our relationships times. There are some of us within each other, within our social groups, within our friend group, some of us can say, yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing here. Can somebody give me a tip here? That's part of what the whole collective of the gold mine is. But I think there's a real struggle out there for a lot of men, and especially men, but not just men, to say, I don't know. Do you think you guys in agreement on that one, or what do you think? Lucius, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, it brings in ego and things like that, but it can be very hard to admit you don't know what's going on. And, as a surgeon, I'm supposed to be the expert, and there's sometimes where I don't know what's going on. And, it took a while for me to feel comfortable talking with patients to let them know, like, look, this is a complex situation. There isn't a right answer, and let's figure it out. And fortunately, the feedback that has come back is it's been good. Patients will understand other situations, other people will understand if you don't know. And it's important to get to that place where your ego, you can let that go, and you'll be able to find a solution because you're willing to admit it. And it just brings in one of the most important things in my life is humility. And if you have that, you're going to be able to find the solution so much better. And one of the first things you got to do is admit you don't know everything.
Absolutely. Craig, you got any thoughts on this?
Aye, lots of thoughts. I basically, most of my adult life has been standing on the shoulders of giants. So, like, I've made careers out of that. Like, my default is to understand that I don't understand everything. And I think there is a lot of power in being able to say that you don't know something. And the reason for that is that it opens a door, I think. As soon as you say that you don't know, then all of a sudden everything changes. And the sort of overwhelming reaction in my lifetime has been, well, let's find out. And so it goes from, all eyes on you, expecting some magical answer to be pulled out of nowhere, to, all right, well, if this guy doesn't know, then we have to kind of figure this out. And all of a sudden it goes from single person with answers or lack thereof to everybody on an adventure to get to the truth or the crux or whatever it is. And that's incredibly meaningful because it builds like so many relationship ties. It makes everybody improve. It opens conversations that may never have existed before. So I think saying that you don't know something is probably one of the most powerful things that a person can do, for sure.
Absolutely. Shaun, where are you coming to on this?
I think it's a two-phased thing. So for myself anyway, as a young fella in the military, I was taught as an instructor to teach and to have all the answers in respect to who was in front of me. But of course, you don't have all the answers. And so I was taught to have all the answers. But when I didn't have the answer, my response should be, I'm unsure, but I'll get back to you on that one later. I'll get an answer for you by the end of the day. I'll have that to you this afternoon. And so it was always a case of own up that you don't have the answer right in the moment, but you're going to find the answer. One way or another, you're going to find the answer. And so that's what I was taught as a young buck. But then I bounced out of the military, got on with my life, and now it's morphed into this. Actually, it's like Lucius's answer. I've got a boatload of experience, but I have a boatload of unanswered questions that I don't know the answers to. Now I just rely on my experience to eventually get to the answer. And it doesn't mean it's going to be beautiful. It may not be pretty. It may not be linear, but I'll find the answer in time through experience. And so I may not have to go searching for the answer from my neighbor or from someone across the world on the internet. I might just have the answer within me. But if I've got the luxury of time, I'll sit down and I'll think about it and be able to provide an answer that is relevant to my experience and relevant to the person if I've got the time. If I don't have the time, then I default back to, I'm unsure. I'll get you the answer. So that's how I started my young life. At 60, my life is now, my default answer is not, I'm not sure. I'll get right back to you. My answer is, I'll think about it. And there'll be no, you're going to get an answer, you're not going to get an answer, there'll be no add-on to that. I'll just think about it. And if I give it a few minutes, if I give it a couple of hours and I've got nothing, then my next piece is straight back to when I was a young buck. I'm unsure. I'll get back to you by end day. And I'll hit another SME, another subject matter expert.
This brings up an interesting question. I just wrote down here, experience is like giving directions to people. And I think that I'm going to build this out and get your guys' thoughts on it. But experience isn't going to tell you an answer, right? It's not going to say if X, then Y. It'll say if X, then usually Y. But sometimes X could be Q. Who knows? And I think that, the more experience you have, the better you are at being able to kind of judge what's going to happen next. But no one ever really knows because the world is chaos, right? Like things can happen at any point in time for any reason. And so I got this picture in my head of, back in your old hometown, giving directions to somebody that doesn't know where they are, a lot of those directions were very localized because you don't have a lot of experience outside of that. It's like, oh yeah, you go down the street, you see the red house, you turn left, and then you go down a couple blocks, and then you do whatever. That doesn't really help that person that much then, because now they're looking for landmarks. But as you gain more experience, as you start to develop an understanding of not only where you are and where everybody else is, it allows you to give specific directions. You head down 2 blocks to the north. You're going to turn west, and you're going to go 3 blocks, and it'll be on your right. It'll be right there. You'll be able to see it, no problem. Big sign, etc. And I'm, at least in my mind, I'm comparing building experience. It gives you a better perception of how to give directions to other people, if that makes sense, and how they're, if I want to get better as a human being, and I look at Lucius, and I'm like, hey, where do I start? How do I get better? You have some experience that you can draw upon. You can give me better directions. But if someone doesn't have any experience, they're going to be like, yeah, go eat better and work out. Right? Like, okay. What do you guys think on that? Craig, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. That's a great way of putting it. I would say that another possibility is to say, let's find out together. That's always a great way of saying you don't know. But if you're interested enough, you're going to sure as hell try to find out with someone.
Interesting. Lucius, what do you think?
Just along the lines of being willing to say that you don't know. It's the only way you're going to get better and learn too. If you think you have all the answers, you're gonna not learn. It's impossible to learn if you already think you have the answers. So the instant you're willing to accept the fact that you don't know things and then vocalize it, that's the chance you're gonna really. That's when you can start learning, and gain more experience and be able to bring it to the next encounter.
Absolutely. Shaun, what are you thinking?
Because of what Lucius just said, I feel obligated to go back in the hot tub time machine about 10 minutes ago when I said that I've got about 9.9 out of 10 tools that I need to talk with someone to move them across the line. That was just to make the point. I've probably got 3.4 tools out of 10 to help someone move across the line. It sounded like a big old brag, but I really don't feel like I'm at a 9.9 at all, just to make the point. I think that humility is something learned. It can't be taught, or, a hard slap upside the head can teach you humility for sure. And life has its way of handing you slaps upside the head that will teach you humility. But in your own personal journey, without any like epic sideways moments, you can find humility, but it freaking takes time. And so I think that's the thing that I want to focus on, is the timeline aspect of this point that you're making, Chance, about how to get directions to do something better. Well, as a young person, you hear things as a young person. And if you're a young person explaining things, you're explaining it as a young person. And what you don't have the luxury of is several decades worth of mega failures to learn how to communicate the nuance of the moment to the individual who's standing in front of you, who's asking, hey man, like, should I eat Kraft macaroni and cheese for the rest of my life? Well, if you're 18 years old, your answer will probably be, yeah, that sounds pretty legit, bro. I mean, it's cheap, it's yellow, it's going to be good for you.
Mm-hmm.
So in time, over a timeline, what you do develop is experience. And that experience is, I don't want anyone to misconstrue experience as, you live such a great life that you gather great experiences and you are a great person. I think a timeline that I'm talking about is you make a ton of failures. You might not be a great person, but you're on your way to becoming a great person the more failures you gather. And so I'm a fan of failures rather than successes. Successes will eventually show up, whatever that means to someone, whatever the word success means. But failures is what I pursue. Failure is what I think everyone should pursue, because it's a lesson that you get to chew on at your own velocity. If you're pursuing greatness in the artificiality of your mind and not being recalibrated by failures, then you get to tell yourself the lie. But if you're pursuing failures, the failures will correct your internal language, which over a period of time will allow you to communicate with other people and give them better directions as to maybe, rather than 2 blocks north and then hook a right, it's go 1 block north and watch out for the pothole that'll totally destroy your rim if you keep on heading straight down that street. So timeline and failure will create experience in order for you to communicate better with others.
I like that. Lucius, you got any thoughts on that?
Oh, it just a lot of very good points came out of it. Yeah, failure is inevitable. The sooner you embrace it, the better you can find opportunities from it. And they talk about the Dunning-Kruger curve, where in the beginning everyone feels like, oh, I got this, and it's only when you really try to pursue the mastery you realize how little you understand. And so along that note, I would encourage everyone to pursue mastery in whatever they're passionate about. It could be anything, but through that you'll find failure, and that will be good. And you'll find humility, because you'll realize you don't know anything as you try to pursue it.
I really like that. Craig, what are you thinking?
Yeah, there's some kind of weird dissonance about failure as a concept that I don't know where it's come from or why it exists, but it really annoys me. And I wish I'd have known about it like 2 decades sooner, which is, failure's inevitable and it's important to learn. Whereas all I hear being trotted out 9 out of 10 times is failure is not an option, which I think is absolutely absurd, and I hate it, and I'll never stop hating it. And another thing, I mean, these points are just got my mind spinning. They're all so good. Like the kind of general, how to articulate this? Let's think. The sort of general way that people conduct themselves, I think, especially when it comes to this, is that they have to have a high degree of confidence in themselves and a high degree of self-awareness to be able to get to the stage where they can answer a question with, yes, absolutely, this is the correct answer, versus it depends. And when somebody answers me with it depends, then I really at that point think, oh, this person knows what they're talking about, because they can see and perceive all of the nuance that exists around a concept, rather than there's one way to do a thing and it's this way, and if you don't do it this way, then you'll fail, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's interesting you bring that up too, because I love this concept of failure as well. For me, I struggled with this for a really long time. And I think the thing that I've come to the realization that the thing that I struggled with was time. And to your point, Shaun, was that I didn't understand when I was young that failure doesn't have a timeline. So like I might not succeed in a particular task, right? I'll go to jiu-jitsu and I'll go for one roll and I'll get tapped out. I can look at that as a complete failure. Oh, I got tapped out. I did not do my jiu-jitsu well. Or I can look at it as a timeline thing down the road. That one non-success is going to help me build the betterment down the road, so that the only real failure is to stop trying, at least in my mind, because then you just, if you never give up, then you never fail. And I thought this was interesting. I read this little, I heard this on a podcast. They were talking about the Roman Empire, and they were saying that they never lost the war against Carthage at one point because they just didn't surrender. They just didn't agree to the terms. They're like, nope, we're just going to keep going. Nope, we're just going to, even though they were getting smashed all the way back into Rome under Hannibal and all this stuff, they never actually accepted the terms in which they technically failed to throw back that thing. And I thought it was interesting that it was just the concept of timeline. They're like, well, we'll get you later. Don't worry, we're coming for you. And it was the success was pushed down the road. It wasn't that they failed in the moment. If that makes any sense. Lucius, you got any thoughts on this?
No, it's a great way of thinking about it. As you were saying, failure is a term that we are fearful of, but you can rephrase it as a setback or some adversity or an opportunity to get better. It's not truly a bad thing until you give up. And whether it's historical examples such as Rome, they did lose a lot of battles, but they kept on going. Or doing jujitsu, man, I've been tapped out so many times, but I got my black belt and I'm still training. I'm still going after it. And so by no means was getting tapped out all of those times of failure. I've learned some lessons. I've gotten better. Hopefully they won't catch me in the same thing again.
I like that. Craig, any thoughts?
Yeah, I just don't know where it came from. Like that failure isn't an intrinsic component of adapting to anything. I don't know where it came from. I get so hung up on the fact that it has so many massively negative connotations that are all utterly absurd, because it's genuinely the only way that we know that we're hitting the threshold of whatever our abilities or capacities are. And then it allows us to basically establish, okay, well, that was a step too far. What happened there? Let's reevaluate. Let's avoid this, maybe do this, do that different, whatever, and move forward. I don't know why it's got such negative connotations, and I wish, that society in general did a better job of helping people at an early age to understand that it's not this apocalyptic disaster, sky is falling, everything's gone wrong scenario, because it just isn't. Because, like you're all saying, it's the only way that we evolve and move forward.
I like it. Shaun, what are you thinking?
I failed to add the second piece to failure, and that is reflection. And so Lucius made me think of it. I can't believe I didn't think of it as I was chirping there earlier. But I mean, Lucius is a fine example of, as a black belt, he's failed. And he knows when he's failed because he looks backwards in time and can realize that as a white belt, I didn't know anything. And now as a black belt, I know a bit more. And as I proceed in the art, I'll learn more. And 10 years from now, Lucius will be able to look back and realize that the Lucius of today knew less. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to reflect on our past, or we're supposed to reflect on our performances, or we're supposed to learn from the failure. I said pursue failure. But if you're only pursuing failure and then not reflecting on the failure on a semi-regular basis to learn how to do things better, then all you are is failing. You're not gaining. And so the failure is the ingredients in the soup mix, but you're the one who's responsible to stir the soup. And the stirring is reflection. And by stirring the soup, I don't mean stir it once and then serve it to everyone at the dinner table. I mean, stir that soup for a couple of hours, a couple of decades, and realize that there's loads of lessons in that simple recipe that you threw together 10 years ago that you thought was a big failure, but now is a minor failure. But it's worth revisiting 10 years later to glean the lessons that you didn't see then, but you can see now.
Absolutely. I got a couple comments here. I'm going to touch on those in a second. I just remembered something that I heard many years ago. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but I'm just going to hit it out here anyway, is that the invention of champagne was a failure. They were trying to make wine, and it just so happened that during the fermentation process, it started to become sparkling and champagne. Bam. So sometimes mistakes just are actually really good things. Couple quick comments here. Lisa jumped in here, said happy Wednesday. Good to see you, Lisa. Winterstorm jumped in here earlier. He said, I believe as important as it is to be able to say I don't know, it's equally important to have those around you who will tell you when you don't know, even when you think you do. And I'm going to get in on this one here in a second, but he also dropped this bomb, which is fantastic. Humility taught can turn into resentment. Humility learned can turn into knowledge. And I want to touch on what you guys' thoughts are on this one, because I'm in complete agreement with this. In fact, that there are lots of times where you can get smacked upside the head by somebody else, and that can turn into resentment. But if you get smacked in the head by life, it can also turn into resentment. So what do you guys think? Lucius, coming to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a point, and it kind of brings together a lot of what we've been discussing up to this point. If someone's not ready to learn a thing, and that could be humility, and you force it on them, there's going to be pushback usually. So yeah, you can't force those things. You hope that they will find the way to be ready to learn. And if you really push it on them, and anyone who's been a parent, you realize like the more you shove something at them, the less it's going to work. And so you provide tools, you try to give examples, you be patient, and they hopefully will find their way when they're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Craig, what are you thinking?
Like I think it just comes down to knowing yourself and being confident in yourself. Like humility comes from people who understand how their own brain works, and they're confident in themselves, confident enough in themselves to be able to sort of say when they don't know, or when ask questions, look for advice, that kind of thing. I think it's basically just about having an understanding of self that all of this stems from.
Absolutely. Shaun, what are you thinking?
One of my roles over here, sometimes I'll openly admit it. It's rare. But usually what I'm doing is just stirring the pot. I'm just doing a little bit of devil's advocate. I'm just trying to throw a wedge into the mix. And so that's what I'm going to do now. And I agree with the sentence. I agree with the statement. I think it's right. But I also think that every once in a while, a little bit of resentment ain't too bad either. Because what that means is it left a mark. You got stung. And so that humility that you were taught, maybe forcefully, maybe in the military, maybe on a really hard selection program, maybe you're resentful because you failed it and it has hung around your neck for years, because it stung that bad. And so when those kind of marks are left, you get to work or you ignore it, but it never goes away. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving. That resentment that you've got for that moment, you'll never be able to forget it. And so you either get right with it or you just remain resentful. But as you keep remaining resentful, you keep coming back to the moment and trying to figure out the moment. And if you do it often enough, if you do it for a couple of decades, eventually, I think, if you chew on it long enough, the resentment gets replaced with wisdom, or the resentment gets replaced with further knowledge that refines the moment for you and makes you realize that you're being a clown or you're being a goof or you screwed up and it's all on you. When in that moment in your mind, you'd flip that script and made it all about everyone else. You screwed me over. I should have been mega, but you didn't let me. And, that resentment can start chewing away at a person and leave a lesson for the future that inevitably they'll have to face. So, I mean, yeah, humility can turn it into resentment, but resentment in and of itself can be a tool.
Interesting. I think you're onto something here, and I want to touch on this because if resentment it leaves a sting, then really what we're talking about is like trauma, right? It's if something in your life has happened to such a degree that it is leaving that kind of mark on you, that then stimulates you to develop resentment about that particular instance. That to me is trauma, right? That's you not being able to move past it. And I know from when I dealing with issues from overseas, dealing with issues from military timing, it wasn't until that I accepted what happened as a whole that allowed me to then move past it. And to accept my own role in it. And to your point, Shaun, a lot of it was me pointing at everybody else, saying, "Oh, well, that guy did those things, and that happened that way because of that person." Blah 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 blah. Rather than just seeing it for what it was. It was an instance of other people coming together, and like things happen when people interact with one another. So, I want to get your guys' thoughts on this in terms of: do you think that type of resentment or that type of humility taught could be in the realm of trauma? Craig, coming to you, what do you think?
I don't know enough about psychology to be able to correctly state or confidently state whether or not that could be quantified as trauma. However, it does create an interesting branch, I think. And I suppose I could weigh in here with a bit of personal experience. And I don't know whether it's nature or nurture. I'm suspicious it's more nurture than it is nature. But if you reach a point where you are on the receiving end of some of this humility talk type idea, and you resent it, it seems like that creates some kind of a branch. And I think I agree with Shaun that down the line, far down the line, there's a lesson there. But the branch that I'm talking about is there's potential for somebody to instantly get hit with that and be like, well, I'll show you. And it will send them on an incredible trajectory whereby they will just absolutely crush everything that they encounter, because they have something within them that basically says, oh, this person has said that I can't do this, so I'm absolutely going to do it, and I will slap them around the face with whatever it is that they think I can't do. That's the person I would like to be. Unfortunately, I'm the other branch, although I feel like I'm getting better. But historically speaking, from a young age, if somebody told me that I wasn't going to amount to anything, or I wasn't going to be able to do anything, I would instantly resent that sentiment. But then I would be like, well, what's the point? And I would just not do the thing, because I'd be like, well, that person, they clearly know more than me. They're in a position of power, and they're telling me that I'm not going to be able to do that thing. So I guess I should go and do something else, which is sort of unfortunate, because that's led me to understand, and this is the end point for the other branch. So not the massive achiever who's crushed absolutely everything that they ever encountered, but the person that's like, I will make it my personal responsibility to never be like that, to never be the person responsible for telling someone that they can't do something, but instead to be somebody that will go out of their way to facilitate everything that they can for a person to make progress, even when they think they can't. But if I see that they can, I will help them do that. So that's what I see there. You've got those two branches. Column A, I would like to have been. Column B, turns out that's what I was.
Interesting. I like this. Lucius, what do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. As a teacher, mentor, parent, however it is, if your goal is to motivate someone for change, there's lots of different ways of doing it. And hopefully you, as the mentor or teacher, know what's going to work. I definitely don't think you should be harsh and create resentment. I don't think that's going to be productive. But there are a few instances where I think if you can dig into somebody and they're that type of person who will turn that into motivation, and if that's your job to motivate in one way or another, great. But I think there are a lot of other strategies that are going to be more productive for the both of you. Just the world of medicine, you have something called pimping. When you're a resident or medical student, PIMP, put in my place, where the structure, perhaps the mentor will call it the Socratic method, but you get hammered with questions, and eventually they're finding a place where your knowledge ends. And it's often done with other people around you, and that can be humbling because you're getting embarrassed because you don't know things when you're around other people. But then as a medical student or a resident, you're supposed to know these things and you don't know. And that's a hit to the ego. And I think some students kind of get resentful, especially if the mentor does it too much. But at the same time, if you thought you know things and then you get exposed, it can be motivating. And the next time you come back to the rounds the next day, you'll have the answer. So kind of as discussed by Craig, there's different ways, and the end goal is to get results and change behavior. You got to figure out the right way to do it with the people under you. But I don't think you should cause resentment or trauma if you have other options.
Yes, I would agree with that. If there are other options, go with something that doesn't cause trauma. But you never know. This is Shaun, you got any thoughts on this?
Do. And as Lucius stated, and it's fascinating what Craig proposed because as he was discussing those branches, I'm thinking like a tree branch, of course, and as those branches are growing out of the trunk of the tree, Craig went on that branch, the other branch went the other way, but inevitably, both branches are just trying to find sunlight, and generally speaking, they both end up aligning to some degree at some point, and so whatever path you take, if you put enough timeline into it, inevitably, I believe, you end up where you were supposed to end up, somewhere much later in your life. You round out as a person through listening to conversations like this, or living your life with a growth mindset, or whatever the case is. I think you're on a branch, but towards the end of your life, all branches end up at the same spot as long as you're making an effort. And to Lucia's point, I agree. I don't think that intentionally creating trauma is the right way to approach anything, particularly as a leader or as a mentor or as someone who is either experientially or professionally qualified to use a variety of different modalities or tools to help someone. I think that you should always defer to the most efficient and effective with the least amount of damage. However, of course, there's outliers, and the outliers are maybe called tier 1 special operators, because I've never met a dude in that gang who, when they are told you can't do that, didn't do this, say, what? Did you just tell me that I can't fly? I'm going to be freaking flying by the end of the week, bro. And whether the person flies or not, it is just the gauntlet is thrown down in front of some people. They will absolutely pick it up, irrespective of whether they think they can punch a hole through a wall, and they'll start punching. I'm like that. I know a lot of my friends that are like that from back in the day. It's not that we refuse to accept reality. We just refuse to accept limitations. And so if I believe that I can do it, get out of the way, and I'll take as long as it needs to get it done. And if I never achieve it, it won't be for lack of trying. And all along the way, I'll never feel like a failure because I'm in the game. And so there are people for sure that love a good, you'll never be able to do that challenge. And so you got to know your audience, you got to know how far you can push, and you got to know that you can't push too hard.
This is interesting, and now I'm gonna throw this right back at you, Shaun. To your point, your question earlier on, you're asking about personnel that are just contrarian, people that are just not going to accept help just because you're given help, and they're going to be opposite on everything that you put forward. So then here's the gauntlet. What if you can't change that person? What if you can't get them to see that? Or let me even rephrase this. Perhaps you can't fix that person. Would that change your outlook on how you engage with the rest of society? Shaun, what do you think?
No, it wouldn't. And you're right to raise the point, and it's a great little topic. I think that at the end of the day, if I'm in tier 1, if I was still in tier 1 and someone said that you can't go save the hostage because of this, that, and the other thing, you'll need to learn how to levitate. I'm going to start learning how to levitate. And I'll work on levitation right up until it's too late. But I'm doing that for the team. I'm not doing that for Shaun. So now that I'm out of that business and I'm just some old dude in my little hobbit town, and someone hits me up in my social media and says, I'm on the struggle bus and can you help me out? And for month after month after month, all they do is act contentiously. And I'm now looking at, is it for the team? No, it's for an individual. And so this individual who's pushing back that hard that it's turning into a war, I don't need an isolated little guerrilla warfare off of my right flanks. I've got like a battlefield in front of me called everyone else that could appreciate the help. And so it's a matter of resources at that point. I just see it as tactical and strategic. Tactically, I'm doing my best, but strategically, the battlefield is massive. It's immediately in front of me. And the stuff that's happening on the flank that I can't control, I have to bypass, maybe siege it for a little bit and come back to it, maybe months later. But it's about serving the right cause, not the individual. but for the greater good. I don't want to pull out the Mr. Spock and Captain Kirk as one of them's melting down in the dilithium reactor chamber or whatever, but it's for the team. You got to melt down for the team. You don't melt down just because you're melting down for Spock. So you got to know what you're in the game for. I hope that answers your question, Chance.
Yeah, I really like it. Craig, what are you thinking on this?
Yeah, aye, Sean's spot on. Again, it's a capacity thing, right? If you throw stuff out and somebody's not picking up what you're putting down, you can basically say, okay, well, it doesn't sound like you've got the capacity for change at the moment, so you need to work on that. You need to spend some time by yourself, figure out what's holding you back, and then when you're ready to listen, come back to me, and I'll be able to help you out. And then, like Sean said, that's a siege, because they've got to go and stew now, and you've basically got this entire operation that's happening over there that you don't even have to be involved in because they're cranking away in their heads. And then, maybe at some point when they think they're ready, they'll come back and go, okay, I'm in a different place, let's go. And then you might be able to see them move forward. And if not, then same again. Nah, you're not ready. Off you go. Come back when you are.
I like this. This is a great place to go. Lucius, what are you thinking?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll just mention it would be awesome if everyone could have the mindset of a special operator, just not, see everything as a challenge that they can try to overcome. I wish some of my patients had that resilience when they're dealing with their own adversities. But yeah, I'm kind of stealing this from a friend and special operator in his own right, Jocko Willink, who I get to be around a lot. Often you have to use an indirect approach when trying to induce change. You can't just come right at the thing. He'll say, you can't do the frontal assault. You got to flank it, and you got to come around it and figure out different ways. And along the lines of not trying to instill humility, but help them find it. You got to find the indirect route to these objectives in your motivation of other people. That's what I'd add to this.
Absolutely. We're a little bit almost out of time here, so we'll do some final thoughts right after this. But first, I just want to say thank you guys, because this has been awesome. Lucius and Craig and Sean, this has been a great conversation. We've touched on quite a bit in the last 57 minutes, and I think a lot of what we can at least do better in life is to have patience. I think that's the biggest one I'm taking from this, is that you got to have patience. And whether you're trying to help somebody, whether you're trying to help yourself, whether you're trying to develop into these things, it's all about patience in my mind. So let's get some final thoughts on anything we've gone over, or any takeaways that you're taking from this conversation. Craig, what do you think?
Know yourself. Evaluate your capacity. Failure is not an option.
I like it. Lucius, what are you thinking?
I think just one of the most valuable things that I've gotten, that has helped me get to where I've gotten, is humility. Being able to accept that I don't know, and it's probably a good thing I don't know, because now I can learn and be better, and take that knowledge into the next thing and help others around me because of it.
Outstanding. Sean, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think timeline is the key focus for me in this conversation. As Lucius said, you've got to be able to sometimes outflank something, and sometimes you'll never be able to outflank it. You've just got to have patience with the world, and you got to have patience with yourself. My struggle, and maybe some other people's struggles that I know, is we like to push the pace so hard. We want to see the results occurring. We want to fix the world, even though it's unfixable. And so I have to constantly dial back my efforts to be helpful, so that they're not overly helpful, or they're not overly focused, or they're not allowing the situation to organically correct itself. Sometimes I'm a little bit too much iron gauntlet. Maybe I need to pull on my fancy boy velvet gloves on occasion.
I would love to see you put on some velvet gloves, because I've never seen them come out. Yeah, that's been gauntlets basically since we started chatting. Yeah, I really can't thank you guys enough for this convo. It's been fantastic, and the only thing I have to add on to this is that we have to continually learn about ourselves, because then we can build upon all of that knowledge continually through our life, and that allows us to grow as people and become the people that we're meant to be when we're meant to be them. So thanks all for coming. We'll see y'all next week. Chimo.
Thanks for having us.
Chimo.